Housing is considered affordable when rent or mortgage plus utilities is no more than 30% of a household's gross income. Median family income is used by the state and federal governments as a baseline for the determination of housing affordability, with incomes determined on a regional basis. Under guidelines set up by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, families with incomes at 30% or less than the area median income are considered extremely low income. Those below 50% are considered very low income, while those below 80% of median are considered low income. HUD adjusts the median family income each year for inflation and family size. For the current year, 2016, the regional median family income for our target area in Amesbury, Massachusetts is $98,100, with the following eligibility limits. So, if the area median income is $98,100, extremely low income is 30% of that median, or $29,430. Very low income would be 50% of that, or $49,050. And low income would be 80% of that median, or $78,480. For the most part, households earning 80% or less of the area median income can qualify for federal or state assistance. HUD is required by law to set income limits that determine the eligibility of applicants for their assisted housing programs, which include public housing programs, Section 8 housing, Section 202 housing for the elderly, and Section 811 housing for persons with disabilities, just to name a few. In order to be affordable to low-income families, housing costs must require no more than 30% of the gross annual income of those households or families. For low-income households, this means that no more than 30% of $78,480 would be $23,544. We can further divide this into maximum monthly costs if we're thinking about renters, dividing $23,544 by 12, which gives us $1,962, which means that a household, in order to have affordable housing costs, cannot pay more than $1,962 per month for its rental. Our goal here is to identify the number and percent of rental units in each block group in Amesbury whose gross rent is at or below $1,962. In order to do that, we're going to be using a specific table, B25063, or gross rent. We're going to turn to American Fact Finder to find this data, going to the Download Center. We're selecting from the American Community Survey Program using a 5-year estimate because we're working at the block group level. Choosing the block group. Working in Essex County. And the table we're looking for, again, is gross rent. Looking at the way this table is structured, we see that it gives us ranges of costs for rent. So we're going to get the number of units whose gross rent falls within that range. We're going to be looking specifically for the number of units whose rent falls below $1,962, which means it's going to fall from about this category here and lower. So I've downloaded the gross rent table from the ACS and unzipped it into a nice clean folder. And when I open up the metadata table, I can see the various fields of data that are in this table, and there are quite a few, so it's important that I understand their distinction. We're going to be retaining quite a few of them this time because the categories that we need span a large range. So we definitely are going to need to hold on to the total number of housing units. And then we're also going to be looking at essentially all rents that are from less than $100 all the way up to just shy of $2,000. But of course, we're working with the CSV files, which Excel does not know how to open natively, so we need to import that data into a clean workbook. So we're going to start with a new blank workbook, and we're going to use the data import wizard to import the data from text. This is delimited, and it's column delimited. We want to make sure that we set the first two columns to be text so that we can join them later. So we're going to be retaining the total and of course the margin of error for the total, which will help us calculate our various statistics of interest later on. But the first thing that we're most concerned with is simply identifying the number of affordable rental units in the various block groups. So that means that we're including all rental units that are below that $1,962 limit. That means we need to add up the estimates for the number of units that fall in price ranges below that limit. And so that spans quite a few columns, so we're going to need to sum them up or aggregate them. So I'm going to add a new column in order to aggregate those values. So here I'm going to add a, oops, sorry about that. I'm going to add a new column name to accommodate that. I'm going to call it affordable 15, so I know that I'm working with the 2015 estimates. And I'm going to sum up all of the various values that, or various column entries that have estimates for the rental units that are below our threshold. So the first one, starting with the one at $100, less than $100 rather, it's right here. And I'm going to add up all of the subsequent columns that fall within those price range. So once I've identified all of the various columns that have the values that I want to make sure that I stop at the column that has the upper threshold of my affordability. So here the range $1,500 to $1,999 encompasses that upper value. It slightly exceeds it, but that's as good as we're going to get here, so I can just enter. And I've added up the number of units that fall into our affordability range. And so it's just really a long series of additions of those various ranges. So we can populate the rest of it down the line, and we can see the number of units per block group. And you can see how that deviates slightly from the total number of available, or total number of rental units rather. So at this point, we're aggregating the number of units that are affordable, and so the last parts of this that we need to do are to calculate the margins of error as well as the proportions and the margins of error for those proportions. And this is something that is covered in an earlier video looking at how we calculate cost burden households and also to recalculate those margins of error.